All right. 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
We've teased it last week. We're finally here. We broke down some of the all-time greats last week, but now we're going to break down the top 5 decade definers. Who were the performers that defined their decade? We'll start with Bruno Sammartino for the 1960s. Why does Bruno get your nod for number 5 here, Jeff?
You know, and I absolutely, Conrad, I'll back all the way up on this. When I got the message, hey man, come up with your kind of GOAT of each decade. I said, okay, let me not just go off of kind of my gut, my thought. Let me do a little bit of a research here. Conrad, when you really look, because again, the in each territory, I think there is so many different opportunities to say, okay, man, oh man, in the 60s, how do you not go with this wrestler? Well, he was regional. There was another guy just as big, but when you look at the sellouts and the drawing power and in a lot of ways, the cultural impact, it's a different era, different time. Most people listening to this weren't even alive during this era. You know, I was born in 67, but Conrad, to this day, and look, we're going way out. You go around New York City and mention professional wrestling, you're probably going to get Hogan one. And I dare to say, if you're into a conversation, you're going to get a Bruno right out of it. The guy, his box office appeal for his era was on the par or maybe bigger than a Lawler in Memphis, a Hogan in the Hulkamania eras. He's right up there at the tip top. So he looked the part. He wrestled the part. There just so many things that he did that they'll obviously never ever, different time, different place. They'll never never be another Bruno.
Just to add some context too, I think that he's got, when you're talking about big draws like you were talking about, I don't think for the majority of his run that fans under the age of 14 were even allowed into Madison Square Garden. Like if you were a little kid, you couldn't even come in. The idea that he sold out Madison Square Garden with adults like this is really impressive, especially when you say so much of the WWF that I grew up on was aimed at kids. And then to go back and think, well, there was a time where kids weren't even allowed in the building. It's just kind of crazy. Also interesting. I'll admit, I didn't know this. I guess as the story goes, have you heard this, that Bruno was offered the shot to be the NWA world champion, but based on the money and the schedule he was making at the time, he turned it down? Is that real?
I mean, that's rumor has it. I can see that. Here was something too that, you know, we are all, I say we, I just think the United States, again, I'm not the expert on this, but I have traveled coast to coast for Jesus now 35 plus years. And I'll say that, yeah, in so many ways, we're a massive melting pot. So many cultures, so many different races, so many ethnic groups, whatever it's all, I wish you could say one big happy family, but it is so diverse. You're talking about the 60s, Conrad, 70s. It was not, and he appealed across the board. And like you said, kids weren't even really a part of the equation. It's his track record, specifically in the Garden. It's hard to wrap my head around it, huh, Conrad? When you really think about, now, wait a minute, every month for how long?
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, let's talk about who comes in at number 4 on your top 5 lists of decade definers. And this one, I got to tell you, you're cheating. It kind of defeats the point of us saying top 5 if you just arbitrarily have a 5-way tie, but that's what you're claiming here at number 4. I'm throwing the flag. Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Jerry Lawler, The Sheik, Carlos Colon. Did you run out of fingers? I mean, what's going on here?
Connie, You can't tell me that Ric Flair was more important in Charlotte than Jerry Lawler was in Memphis, than Dusty was in Florida, that Carlos wasn't in San Juan, that Sheik wasn't in Detroit. How the hell are you going to decide that? Because from a business perspective, from a box office perspective, from the business perspective, look, you're throwing the flag on me. If I have to pick one, I got to go what I know in detail, because Flair did travel, and Dusty's longevity is not matched by Lawler. Carlos was a startup, but super important. And the Sheik, you can't really say that he had these, he could work with, and he could work with multiple opponents, all this. But if you want to talk about the most well-rounded, but I didn't want to go right back to Lawler, but Lawler defined to me, it's how do you, what box didn't he check in the 70s? Heel babyface, box office, multiple opponents, cultural effect, celebrity outside of professional wrestling, stayed there, didn't travel, just very occasionally, homegrown. So I'm gonna take my red challenge flag out of my pocket. I'm gonna throw it right on the field. I'm gonna challenge you. Your flag's gonna be overruled, and I'll go with Lawler's number 4.
See, I don't think Flair was at his peak in the 70s. I mean, he didn't win his first world title until 81. He becomes the man really in 83. Lawler, I don't think traveled, so I would struggle with putting him there, but I saw what you did with Bruno. If this were my top 5 and it's not, I might have said Andre. And if I couldn't go Andre, I would probably have went Dusty or the Sheik. But I just don't think I would have went.
Oh, Conrad.
I think it was too early.
Now, I bragged on myself about doing a little bit, just making sure I wasn't missing anything. How do you Silva completely scratched this number 4 for me.
Who's number 4 then? Who is it?
Andre.
Andre is the man. There you go. How about that?
He drew money everywhere.
In every town, every continent, every territory. He was the 70s.
So much so because Vince Sr., yeah, man, Conrad, you're on it. Because Vince Sr. saw it, but also he didn't have the vision that his son had, but he looked at it and said, all right, these NWA group, they got their touring champion. That's fine. But I'm going to get the real attraction and put him under contract. And I'll book him out. And he'll always have a place here. I'll pay him well. But if he needs to go to Montreal, if he needs to go to Toronto, if he needs to go to Memphis, he needs to go wherever. He made money in Japan. I can book him. Yeah. Conrad, it is a no-brainer. Damn. I'm mad at myself. 70s, Andre. There's not a close second when you look at it from that perspective. Conrad, that's why you're.
That? That's why. So Bruno's is 60. Andre's 70s. Let's look at number 3, the 80s. I feel like this is the biggest no-brainer of them all. It's got to be Hulk Hogan, right, Jeff?
Yes. I mean, we talked early in the pod today when he beat the Sheik, and that era was ushered in with the music and the theme, and yes, the Rocky movie and the celebrity status, but the WrestleMania era and the pay-per-view era, and just all the different things that Vince, the promoter, put around him. But if you don't have that engine with a slicked up, horsepower that was willing to, Conrad, Vince shared this at the memorial about how hard a worker Hogan was. I have to really think that through and go, imagine if he would have had, I won't call out names, but there's people now that, limited dates and this and that. Yeah, Hogan sacrificed his hips and his knees and his family and all that kind of stuff. But he did it. I mean, he went to work, and the business paid him well for decades. But he's the one who made the conscious decision to go to work all those shots, all those dates. And you know, it's been covered now in his passing, but hey man, he broke in Hero and the Florida deal, and he worked a couple of territories, and then worked Vern, and then worked Japan, and then back to Vern, and then WWF and all that. So he paid his dues, and when he had the opportunity, he didn't let off the gas, and he rode it hard for years and years and years. And yeah, he's no doubt the 80s guy.
I think that's the biggest no-brainer, perhaps anywhere on the list. But I am interested in hearing why you chose number 2 the way you did. There's no arguing about Jeff's number 2 on his top 5 decade definers. When we take a look at the 1990s, Jeff brought us Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, there's no arguing that 98 and 99, he's the man. In 97, he gets all that crazy momentum going. And he had a really nice run through the earlier 90s as a TV champion, a tag champion, a US champion. But man, you put a lot of stock in 98 and 99. Is it just about the Austin 316 boom and how hot it was? It overrode everything else in your opinion?
This was a tough one. You pointed it out. But if I'm buying stock in the 90s in a particular wrestler, who got me the biggest ROI? And I went down the list. Just look at Brett. Brett was a tag wrestler, and we talked earlier. He had a company that was coming off the steroid era, and I think Nash just made a recent comment about how Brett invested in the brand and the fan base, and signed autographs and night after night, and the European tours, and even in America and all this. And like the credit that Brett, he really plowed a lot of ground early 90s. The decade didn't end like he wanted it to, or many other people. So he's obviously in that conversation. I also looked at Conrad. It's hard to deny Hogan's effect in the 90s. Without him being the third man in NWO, where does all that go? I'm not sure. Another guy who spent his entire 10-year run, for better or worse, but he was the main event guy. And without Sting, you just kind of look at WCW just there, Flair, all this. But Conrad, I'm going back to kind of buying the stock and wherever it may be. Buy a young Steve Austin. He came out of good old USWA, teamed up Pillman and TV Champ, and had his little short run in ECW. I saw that. But you just, and look, I know I'm biased because I was there. Whether we had our run in or not, that's all water under the bridge. But I witnessed firsthand, and by design, I wasn't thinking, but I put him, like when you're there and the promo and before I got there and watching the TVs, there was no question anybody in this industry knew that when it clicked like a talent hasn't clicked. You'd have to go back to 82 Hogan when he came on the scene. There was nobody that took the industry by storm. Yeah, Hogan was around before Hulkamania cranked, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was Stunning Steve and all that. But man, when his rocket took off in 97, you just, it like, how do you put somebody over him? And I know we're debatable and we can argue and this and that and this, that, but Conrad, I just think at the end of the day, Stone Cold got so far higher than anybody else. What was it, 2018 or 19 in Dallas when he had the match with KO and all that? I mean, that legacy, and he's done bits and pieces through the years, and I know all this, but that foundation that, and again, I've said it many, many times on here, you had a heel that was started on television in 1983, 84 in Vince McMahon. I'm the boss. Now, he didn't do overt things, but he was positioned as the boss all through the deal. And then he was steroid and that whole picture, and he's a trial. So he was a character in the public for years. And when he revealed himself as Mr. McMahon, there wasn't a person watching that program that couldn't relate to the evil empire of employee-employer relationship, and that magic. It just took the industry to a whole nother level. To me, Austin McMahon is the single thread that took WWE public, and TKO wouldn't have acquired him had that storyline not have taken place, had Steve not carried that ball like he did.
Well, we're finally here. Let's get to number one on Jeff's top 5 decade definers. Probably also not a surprise. The one and only John Cena comes in at number 1. You want to talk about longevity? He had a lot of it. Now I know we're talking 2000, so that'd be 2000 to 2010. And there's no denying that from about 04 on, it was the John Cena show. He becomes world champ in 05. And he carried the WWE in 05, 06, 07, 08, 09, and 10. No brainer. John Cena was the top wrestler in the world during those years.
And you know what? Here's something that I don't think John and others, but I don't think John will get. I don't even think people put it in this stratosphere. In that, and you could go back and look at, now everybody's accustomed to. We did, Texas did a stadium show, Wembley. WWE's doing Saudi, and now we're thinking in terms of baseball stadium shows, football stadium shows, and premium live events, and just this massive a type deal. When you go back to the 2000s, Conrad, and I lived it. My timing of starting an alternative brand, it was what it was. It happened in the exactly way. But you talk about maybe the worst time to start a startup wrestling industry would be in 2001, 2, 3, 4, because Vince kicked his competition's ass. There was a number 1 and number 2, and there was no longer a number 2. And for all intents and purposes, we're on pay-per-view only for the first 2.5 years. John was given the ball as a cold product that wasn't moving a lot of tickets. I just think that John doesn't get the credit for kind of his ability to put, in so many ways, and Vince is well aware of this, put the WWE brand on his back and built it, and hard work, and did all the Make-A-Wish, and did all the appearances, and did all the morning drive time radio and TV, all the grind like Hogan did in the 80s. John knew what he signed up for, and I got a ton of respect for his work ethic, and I think that's the single greatest asset that made him the John Cena of the 2000s, his work ethic.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama. What could they help me with? But I'm out here in California, and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad, it seems. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
That's number 212 non-equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.